how we're trying to. Dana, can you hear us? I can hear you.
I'm not muffled because of the mask, but
No. Station we had in December where we removed the C1 and the C2, the really old ones, because it was part of the 1827 ordinance that was the plan, was to pull that. This is the other one. So we could repeal it with the rest of the group. That's the reason why we're hoping to have this ordinance repealed. It's one of our old ones. There is currently no property that has this zone. C1 and C2 ordinance was put into place, the 1827. It would take the place of all three of those. So that's why we're requesting to have the C3 removed from the ordinances repealed.
visit us.
Correct.
And it's not, and we've got everything covered on it.
We don't have any applications. We don't have anything with. The books because we're trying to, you guys have worked so hard trying to clean these up. So now we're putting things into motion, pulling the things off that we don't use anymore. That long time. M2, what that stands for is the manufacturing. So the two popular zones that we do have currently is the MCM, which is the manufacturing mixed, or the MP1, which is the planned manufacturing zones. So it's not like we're doing away with any manufacturing as a whole. We still have the two other zones that we currently use. There's quite a bit of property that are already using that right now. We do not have any M2 zones on any of the maps right now at all.
Items 1 and 2.
We can only do one at a time.
One at a time.
A1.
Okay, we have a motion to open up the public hearing for the repeal of chapter 18.30 for C1 commercial zone. Do I have a motion for, or do I have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are in a public hearing. Comment?
We
On record.
advertise it on YouTube, so we won't look at that.
Well, no public comments. Okay, not hearing any, I'd like to do we hear a motion to close the public hearing at this time?
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Okay, we have a motion to close the public hearing. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Do we have any comments, discussion? Aye. Public is, okay, is there any discussion from the commission at the time to make a recommendation to the city council?
Council that we repeal Chapter 18.
Second, is there any discussion from the planning commission at this time?
Public hearing to recommend to city council that we repeal chapter 18.34 M2 manufacturing zone.
We have a motion to open. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor to open to a public hearing, say aye.
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 Okay, we're now in a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that would like to discuss this with the planning commission at this time? Okay, got a motion and a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and all in favor say aye to close the public hearing.
Aye.
Aye.
We are now closed. Is there a discussion that needs to take place? Anybody would like to have a discussion or a motion?
For your packet, this had a lot of lines through it and a lot of new parts. So feel free to ask questions.
I had to read it several times because it felt backwards to me.
Yeah, a little bit. So very specific, it's where Fox Meadows Phase 5 is. That's where we want that one. And the idea is we wanted the R5 specifically down there in that subdivision, and we're gonna create a new zone, the patio home for the future, to kind of have it be a little bit different, more specific to what we want as a city that can be placed in the places that we deem that would be a good fit for 'em. But that's down the road. So this is what we're doing right now, is just fixing the R5. We took out the multi dwellings, but we did say that we wanted the single family. It's just to kind of rectify what it is and make it clearer and not as cumbersome of trying to explain. We wanted to make sure we allowed home occupations and household pets, because if it's not on the books, we can allow them to have it. And we wanted to make sure that they had the opportunity just like anybody else. But we put it in this one so it has one place to be able to see everything. Which it is right now until it is adopted or whatever changes are made it did refer to some of the zones that are no longer on the books. So that's another reason why we wanted to clear that up. Able to look through it, maybe ask, like, write some questions down that you might have, or anything specific you want me to go over. And 20 on the back. So that's from the property line. One thing to remember is the property line is not where the asphalt ends. Right of way and the property line meet. The right of way, of the right of way, which is the city's. Measure the setbacks from. So 20 feet back from that, their actual start of their property line is the closest where the house can start. Right there, no, that's just the minimum. They can go a lot more if they really wanted to.
Most of our other,
They are.
They're just over on the east side of the barn, where they have those 4 little cluster homes.
Mhm.
This would not be permitted. That kind would not be permitted in this.
Correct, because they're
They're
single.
attached.
Because we have our setbacks, it wouldn't allow for the homes to be attached.
Okay.
That's, that's something that we, if
So,
we
so
wanted to add with
exactly
the-
like what is at Fox Hills right now?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
We wanted to make sure it fits that while we look at a patio home that would work for what the city wants in the future.
that we've kind of talked about as this group is a whole nother,
Mhm.
we would look at a whole nother zone. This
Mhm.
is kind of a,
This is, we're trying to
own
help
little-
it, so it's just the Fox Meadows area. Confusion with some of the residents, and we wanted to make sure everything was compliant. And with it referring to older zones, it was kind of hard to make things very clear and
well, the way it was written, it was,
yeah.
it was written what is not allowed versus what is now allowed. So it was kind of backwards to me, so I had to kind of read it.
Normally, when you
twice.
write an ordinance, you put exactly what you want in at the very beginning rather than kind of backwards.
So I had to kind of read it twice.
Because Dean's not here. So if you want to move up there, you can. He's not here, so wherever you want to sit.
Vote either way, it doesn't matter. You're good, whatever you're comfortable with. For the discussion on the 18.22 R5 zone. there anyone from the public that would like to address the R5 rezone at this time? Submitted.
Really like this zone because I think there's a lot of people in the city that want to stay in the city but they don't want a big 30-acre lot. And I wish there was more of this zoning.
That's the
I-
goal
And,
Yeah.
down the.
yes.
That's what
And
we're
so I'm
looking for.
very much, I think it's a great idea because, I think there's just so many people like, look at the Tams, they're gonna get old one, they're gonna want a small house.
And,
Just kidding,
and
Travis.
just a little bit of a thought with that, Jeff, I think you're right. And as this group, I think we want to come up with a zone that fits a patio. And then we come as a group to decide kind of
Yeah.
where we have it and where we can put it. Where this, because it was kind of, and now we're kind of cleaning it up
Yeah.
because it was forced into a place that was kind of reserved for commercial. And I think that's what we're doing tonight is cleaning it up. But I think agree with you.
Yeah.
If we could come up with some patio places that'll fit into the city, I think a lot of citizens would like that.
I think it's a great idea.
Be a great place if we can find the right places for it.
Right.
So,
I had a question for you, Jill, just because this zone is really specific for this area. So down the line, as we do have a new zone for the patio homes, and will this actually be a zone that down the line we are repealing the way we just repealed other zones, that it really isn't applicable anymore? Because basically a patio home zone will be replacing this. Is that
Well-
correct or not?
This zone will still be on the books, but because of how specific it is within the ordinance, they really can't ask for this specific ordinance or zone to be anywhere else.
Okay.
That's why we did it specifically to that
Okay.
location, while we are in the works of trying to get the ordinance.
The 18.22 R5 zone.
second on the table. Any discussion on the proposal on the table? Legislation item number 4, discussion recommendation to city council for the rezone request from A2 to RE15 on parcel 19-04014-0030.
this property. Most of us know it as the Dick and Moore property. So, but Mr. Smith is the owner of the property, and do you guys remember Budge Farms?
Mhm.
They're right here. Here's 1,500. So Budge Farms comes down to 1,500 and it enters. Stops. General plan shows for 2 to 3 units per acre. So what they're requesting is an RE15, which is the third acre lots. And lots, which as staff, we see no issues. There's no spot zoning because it's connecting Budge Farms, again, right here, and then that meadows, both farms. So it would connect with those guys. Recommend to city council.
Either side of that are already RE15.
Correct.
Yeah, questions for the applicant? For a public hearing?
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are open for a public hearing. A rezoning, well, we are rezoning tonight only, and we're not taking this to the site plan. But can I ask a quick question on the fact that we have the sliver? I guess we're rezoning, and most of all of this entails the rezoning of the lower part, but we do have the sliver of, I guess it's quote, Budge Lane. That. And or is that not part of the rezone?
It'll just be his property, because if he doesn't own that piece, that top piece, then it won't include that piece.
So that is not part of the rezone tonight then?
new parcel ID because Weber County didn't have that give me or even show me the bounds.
This
So
is still,
make sure you guys are talking really close and loud enough in the mics.
in my mind, I guess, is how flag lots, or we still don't end up having,
It'll
how does it all tie in? If you can pull that map back up, I guess, I want to make sure that we don't,
so
that
if they
we-
wanted to do anything
I
with
guess I'm
that little
still, I'm
strip,
still worried about not just the strip, but if we're ended up, I guess I'm looking,
yeah, let's
we
go like this.
still end up plan of transportation, the whole idea was still to have this whole thing tie in and have this come down ultimately, but see, now you're having, you still have this piece here. The whole idea was supposed to have this come down, but now she's talking of coming in.
She had the idea to bring a road down here.
Okay, but that's not what he's tying into his,
No, he's the concept, again, this is a concept drawing, not final.
that's why I'm
So
preliminarily looking
he's
here.
hoping to have the connection here with Budge Farms down to here with Matthew Meadows. That we look at with preliminary.
Okay, and that's,
We do look at that during preliminary, I
okay,
promise.
because that was the whole idea, was having this.
I know
And
that
I'm
strip
still-
right
I'm
there is not
still-
wide enough for a road.
You know, by the time, and I'm still concerned that this has still got to come back and tie in.
It won't
That's-
tie in down here because we have that main right here.
That's still got to be figured out. That's got to be
preliminary.
worked out. Just keep that in mind, that that's still got to be figured out. There's a farm, there's two homes there, right there on that spot, so the farmland, and so, understood. So, it's from the public at this time.
Public hearing on the rezone request or item number 4 on the rezone request from A2 to RE15.
We have a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Public hearing is closed. Go ahead and open for comments. What are the comments on this so far? Discussion.
Along with you, I can see some potential issues down the line, but because that's not really what we're discussing tonight, we're actually just looking at the rezone request. Then there will be other questions that come up later depending on the plans and different things. But as far as the rezone, it does fit with our general plan. It fits with the neighboring properties, and it looks to me to make sense that these properties would all flow together.
So whoever makes the motion, it'll be a recommendation.
Motion that we recommend to the city council approval of the rezone request, agenda item 4 from A2 to RE15 on parcel 19-014-0030.
Right, we got a recommendation of, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Go ahead now, move on to our administrative item. Discussion decision, conditional use site plan for a fence, location 19-236-0007, 1505 Stonefield Way.
Corner. Requesting a conditional use permit. They're not going to put a building or anything, it's just a fence. The reason being is, one, it's a commercial, so anything that's done on the property has to go through as some type of site plan. But because it's just a fence, it has to come to you guys, because what they're requesting kind of understand why it comes to you guys. Normally, we would require a 6-foot concrete or masonry wall in this zone, but it does give them the option to see if they can use a different substitute for a parameter around their property, which has to be approved or modified by you. So that's the reason why it's before you. Talking with staff, so Dana and Tyson, and anybody else on our DRC group, if there was any comments, we just want to make sure if it is approved by you guys, that it's on the property line, not where the curb is, because that part is the right of way. A gate here, and there's already existing fence right here. So they just want to add it here and around for security purposes. Well, there was one property that came, and we went back and forth in this meeting. It was like December 2019, and pointed out that everyone else had chain link fence, and I don't know if you want to have her kind of speak to their behalf.
you maybe speak to a little bit of more what it is that you're specifically looking for, or is it with slats, or what kind of chain link fence and what you're actually looking for?
Are you wanting me to answer? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we are just wanting a chain link fence up to secure the property. We've had a lot of stuff stolen in the last 2 years. The original plan was to build a building last year, but then COVID hit. So now we're just wanting to secure the property until we make future plans. Not sure what those are yet. And as mentioned, every property on this business park has chain link fence, so we're not quite sure how that happened, but we're just wanting it to be securing our property.
When they do come and with plans for a building, it will come back because it's a site plan.
That was my next question. So if this was conditionally allowed, I guess, then at that time it would be reviewed in the as part of the
Depending on what their
building,
plans are,
what the plans are.
yeah. We can look at it again when they come with the plans.
Could that be written into this, or how?
You can approve it until they come, bring in more plans, that's fine. Want it, you're gonna have a harder time with them changing it then. I mean, you can relook at it, but once you approve it, because
Yeah, then there's no
It's
going
gonna-
backwards on it.
it's harder to go back than it is to go forward.
My thing is, they should never be allowed out there, because what we're doing is we're allowing, that's the look out there that you're gonna end up with.
Yeah.
Because you don't enforce what is supposed to be the look. That's what you're
Because-
trying to get, is a clean look out there.
Yeah, we started down or somewhere along the line, and maybe it was years ago.
I would want to make sure that it's more and more, the whole idea out there is to keep the place clean
Mhm.
and a nice industrial type park out there.
Mhm.
And the more and more you drive out there, it's starting to look not like a clean industrial park, it's starting to look like a cluttered. Group to go and enforce.
How we can single this one out and say, everybody else is okay, but you have to follow this. That's a hard call.
Look at the ordinance out there and
That is
possibly
the
update
ordinance.
it.
Well,
I mean,
because the application is brought in, it goes off of the ordinance of what it is.
right, but
Which
but if
is-
we have to do that now tonight, but maybe going forward, we may want to update our ordinance.
We can
for
update
out there
ordinances,
later.
we can update ordinances, but once things are done, they're grandfathered in.
Right,
So,
that's
but
what I'm saying,
yes.
because of now what everybody's doing out there, we may want to look at updating it maybe we update and tighten it.
Correct.
So it's just like what we did earlier tonight. We cleaned it up and say, okay, this is what it's going to be going forward, just so everybody knows this is how it is.
Mm-hmm.
So this might be something that we want to.
Map, Jill, if you could maybe
Chronicle.
pull that back up.
Yep.
Right away on the south of that.
This is right here, or this is the right of way right
Yeah,
here.
yeah, right there.
So that will be part of the condition. They have a survey done and they know exactly where the property line is. And that's where they can put the fence. They can't put it within the right of way. So this most likely won't, it might be shifting a little,
Okay.
but it's based on the survey.
Okay.
And that's why the condition of
putting a masonry or concrete wall, we wouldn't be hearing this, correct?
a building, it would come to you guys, but if they were just putting the wall, we would just make sure it wouldn't cause any problems with the storm sewer, and that would be a different thing.
Are you open to putting slats into this with the chain link? Is that part of, were you open to that?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm only hearing like every 5 minutes of conversation. We can put slats in it. The wind is a little bit of a concern with slats, but we have no problem putting slats in. And the fence is more, I don't even know if it's like considered permanent just because we don't have a building plan yet. Because once there is a building plan, it could all completely change, obviously, because we have to come and present that anyways. This is just for now, just to secure our trucks and all of our property, but we're totally good with putting slats in.
Another question, are they putting a fence on the west side of the property? Because that's just an open field, the railroad tracks right behind them.
That was the plan. They wanted
was
to
the
put
plan?
a fence all the way
All
around.
the way around, yeah. So is there any other discussion, or do we have a recommendation, or? Or questions at this time for the applicant?
To stay consistent with what's down there, I would say I would be in favor of just keeping everything consistent. Even though we kind of have deviated, I think, from the actual code. But like, I apologize. That's embarrassing.
No, not a problem. Here, I'll turn this a little bit.
Thank you. Like David mentioned, if if everyone else has that down there and yeah, it's hard, I feel like it's hard to single them out and say you have to do something different. But
I personally agree with you because I have heartburn with us going to the chain link. So I totally agree with you. I would like to have seen the place stay cleaned up down there. And if you drive, I would like to challenge everybody to go drive through there someday this week, or maybe not when all the winter's down there, but we've actually let it go a lot worse than I would like to have seen it. But I agree, if that's the way it's, if we probably need to update our standard so we can keep it consistent.
Mhm.
And so with that, do we have someone that would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we do a conditional use site plan for a fence, location 19-236-007, 1505 Stonefield Way, but that conditional use site plan fence be a chain link with slats.
and the conditions.
And, oh, thank you. And the conditions, which the staff had recommended, the fence must be on the property line and not within the ROW, the right of way.
Okay, we have a recommendation on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And we have a second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any opposed?
Commissioner Neff, could I make a recommendation, though, that we do look into the codes of what we have on maintaining or the status of chain link fences with slats? Because if we don't have a code about the maintenance of them, we maybe should look at.
It would be in our nuisance code, so I just have to look into that.
Yeah, we
one.
might
And then
just wanna take a
I
quick-
can get that
A
updated
quick
to you
look,
guys.
look at the fence, just see what the fence or the slat, I like that. Because see if we can just do a quick cleanup of that area, or it might help down there to clean up. That way we can maybe become more standardized down there. I think that's a good idea. I like that. All right, let's go ahead and we will move on to the next item, administrative item number 6, discussion decision attached accessory apartment located at 3581 North, 1050 West, parcel 16-3 or 231-0005.
Okay. The applicant is not here. I'm assuming his wife forgot. She's probably home with her little one. Here's the property. I forgot to make slides for it, so I apologize. I don't know, Andy might remember because he's been on a long time. This property had been approved for attached accessory previously. The reason why it's before you guys again is kind of give you guys some information on attached accessory apartments. So they're apartments within the main structure, because we only allow one structure of a dwelling per lot. So these are typically in the basement. We do have requirements that it can't be more than half the home. The property owner must be living in the home as well. It has to have its own separate entrance and safety precautions. So, egress, walkways to the property, to the doorway. So, but the problem, or not the problem, the requirement is this approval goes with the actual owner, not the property. So the previous owner sold it to the applicant, who is John Child. And now John Child has remodeled, made sure everything was up to date, and wanted to have a registered attached apartment with you guys under his name. So that's why it's coming again. He would have been here, but he's out of town. However, and like I said, I think his wife probably forgot. So the location, here's Lowman View Elementary, 900. Here's Pleasantview Drive. It's just a little home just right off of a cul-de-sac. Here's here's the layout. So it actually does have quite a few bedrooms. There's living quarters, a kitchen, washer, dryer, bathroom. So I mean, it makes for an apartment. We had Sean, our inspector for Pleasantview, go and make sure everything's up to code, and he did come back with the approved inspection. So here's a kind of a closer look so you can kind of see where the parking is. So there's enough parking for both upstairs on one side and the downstairs on another. The downstairs actually enters, here's a better shot of the backyard. There's a walkway that goes downstairs right here. So they have an entrance and all of this is cemented in. So everything's safe. They can walk in without walking on the grass. They have their own entrance, and inside it actually does not connect to the top. It is completely separate, but it is deemed as one whole house. So as the city staff and the inspector sees it meets all the requirements that the city has, so that's why it is before you guys for that approval. Or denial, whatever you guys see fit.
We're showing 1,500 square foot. Is it, that's half that building, half that house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Be the whole downstairs.
It's the whole
Just can't be
basement.
more than half.
Yeah.
And him and his wife and his family will occupy the upstairs.
Are there any questions for staff on the presentation for the application at this time?
There haven't been any complaints in the past of neighbors or parking issues or anything else that you are aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. Have you heard anything?
Well, this is nice. No. I didn't say that. Oh, come on.
Gonna ask her.
You haven't heard
No,
anything?
come on, Sarah. It's a nice place right in the cul-de-sac. I remember driving by this on the first approval of this one, and it's a nice little corner spot it's a nice place for a AAA.
It is actually really nice. I've gone in it before, and the bedrooms are rather large, and it's a good apartment.
Can I make a motion that we recommend approval of the attached accessory apartment located at 3581 North, 1050 West, parcel 16-231-005?
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Can I clarify one thing? This is just an approval, not a recommending approval, right?
Administrative items, you make that approval.
Yeah, so we're just
Oh,
approving.
this is just an approval, sorry.
I would recommend approval then.
We have a motion to recommend approval. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion for a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion is approved, unanimous. We'll go ahead and move on to number 7, discussion decision, plat amendment to change the size of easement located on lot 1 of Rockwell Estates, 677 West, 3000 North.
Okay,
Okay,
we are moving along. We only have 2 items left.
got me with all these red lines and drawings and crisscrosses, and so I'm anxious to hear this one.
I'm like, what? Okay. So, all right. Rockwell Estates. It's this subdivision that's located right. So here's Serenity, here's 600, 3200 we'll just sub through that you guys, this is one that's already recorded and you guys have seen it, council's seen it. And then it stubs through right here and it goes up and has the cul-de-sac. So just some clarification on that, the location. So the proposal tonight is for this lot right here, which is at the bottom. It's kind of hard to see, but it would be down here. Okay, just so you can kind of get the idea of where it's at. So right now it is 20-foot easement, which it kind of continues down right here. That's why it's not showing here, is because it's the right of way. And if it's within the right of way, it's our property. It's dedicated to the city, so nothing's going to be built on the road. So to kind of clarify with that. But once it hits a property, we have to have an easement that gives us the right to be able to go in, maintain whatever's underneath. It's usually pipes, or for example, you'll see these little ones, and those are utility/drainage easements. Sometimes there's things in there, sometimes it's just for natural drainage. This easement right here is for the storm drain from Serenity, which is up here. To kind of give you guys some history and clarification. There was an agreement with Serenity that the property right here would have a temporary easement because all the storm drain water was just being dumped on this property. And then it would just be temporary, and then when it did get developed, it would have that 20-foot easement. It has been recorded as a 20-foot easement. Now they're wondering if they can get an approval to shrink it from 20 to 10, because that agreement has been fulfilled. They want to know if you would be willing to shrink it. I'm going to be very honest, I don't know what everything entails to maintain what's in the easement. There will be a pipe that goes down there. So I thought it would be best to have the people that do to kind of help answer your questions, give you all the information you need to make the decision to best of your knowledge, whether you say, yep, we'll let you go down to the 10 or whatnot. Does that make sense? So I have Tyson. He's our Public Works Director. He would be the one, if something were to happen, his group would go in and take care of it. And Dana, who is on Zoom with us, is our engineer. She works with Jones and Associates. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Do you want me to put anything up on the screen, or?
So can I, real quick, so is this is a lot here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the easement, this is the whole 20?
No, let's see if I can zoom in. Oh, nope, I can't. So let me pull up the current layout so you can kind of see the difference. So you can see why they're requesting to have it shrink, because that way you can see how large it is. It's right here. Nope, that shows the new one. Okay, this shows it. So as you can tell, let me zoom in so you can see better. You can see how wide that is. That's 20 feet, where 10 would be half that. And the reasoning, Yvonne called us and let us know with their CCNRs, they require a certain square footage of a home. And with that 20-foot easement, it's not allowing them to build the home that they're wanting. So they're requesting to have the storm drain easement shrink. So that's what initiated this. Mm-hmm. So with looking at everything, we wanted to make sure we gave you everything that there is, so you can make the decision whether to allow the shrink or whatever.
So is there a pipe that runs all along there, or what? There will be, so that's,
So kind of tell us a little bit, Tyson, give us the short engineering.
So to get a 10-foot east, most of those are within, it's not from a physical infrastructure, you're not picking up underground utilities, and that's in the normal 10-foot. So do you have the plan set?
Do you want the original?
Jill, we're going down the wrong road, so I don't know where to speak up. On our plat amendment, we actually asked, and Dana's the one that said it, they don't want to approve these, that whole line be changed to a 10-foot instead of a 20-foot easement. And I asked Dana if we wanted to jog in and out, and she said no. So our plat amendment that we have drawn by our engineers is that whole line to go to a 10-foot, because it also affects just one other lot that's skinnier, and it affects, the ones that are 100-foot wide, because then they only have 70 feet left of their other side. So I just wanted to make sure as we're talking.
The plans I have was only lot 1.
I only sent over one plat amendment, and that was the entire thing, so. And that was for Dana, so I'll pull it up right now. Anyways, we left it, this is the owners of lot 1 right here, and we left it, theirs fixed, but the owners of lot 7 haven't picked out a plan, and I don't want to come back and budget it.
You want to come up? Because Dana's saying she can't hear you.
Sorry, this became the perfect storm as well. I also wanted to say I'm not a dummy, but sometimes some may accuse me of that. But we had this in our pre-approval of our subdivision. It always showed a 10-foot line. It is Serenity's water. When Mark Green got his subdivision approved, at the very last second when we bought this property, they told us, oh, they let him put an easement. And I'm sure the city thought, well, Nelson Homes at one point was going to take this and was trying to get patio homes, and who got 3rd-acre lots, and they probably thought it would tie into a storm drain. Well, we thought that storm drain would come to 3200, that top road, and we would be able to tie in. But because my subdivision that is just to the west of the 700 West really had a whoopsie years ago, which I've been there 23 years, it only had a 4-inch storm drain, so we could not tie to that upper road. So then we found out after we closed on the lot, after we did our subdivision, that no, you've got to go 2,000 feet for these 9 lots water, which at that time was $80,000 to give you an idea of how much this line is. It always said 10 feet, but Dana back in June had put some notes for our engineer to get to, and they kind of stayed there on, I think it was June 10th. November comes around and we're ready to record, and Dana says, there's still some things that I've addressed and other ones that have not been changed. So I'm panicking. Jill's got COVID. Amy is trying her best to help me with Dana because we had already missed the November 9th meeting, and then we skipped that 23rd meeting for the city council to get recorded. So anyways, I hurry and shoot off to my engineers. Did you see that? Please address her things. I did not even notice when they recorded that they had the 10 went to the 20. And then these people who have been with us for 1.5 years, 2 years, and been, if you know right now, plan designers and stuff are taking a year, 1.5 years. They've been designing their home, paying big bucks. Now their home doesn't fit on this lot. So it's a big, fat, hairy deal that it went from 10 to 20. So we looked up in the ordinances. Your ordinance does say that it is a minimum of 10 feet, but this is a line to give you a reference. My street holds about 68 homes on a 4-inch line. Taking it down to a retention pond that is not working, and Tyson can verify that we're paying money, and we got our retention pond back to fix some issues with that. This is 9 homes in a 15-inch going to an 18-inch line, so it after a retention pond. So it is not going to have but a drizzle for this $90,000 line that we're putting in. I mean, in the worst case storm, maybe it's going to, but this is not a pressurized line that you're most likely going to have to tear up, is my point to that. We are still talking to the canal company. We have been beg, borrowing, and stealing. I'm a tenacious gal. I've been trying to say, please let us put this gallon of water, because it's after the retention pond, then the canal. I know you're getting everything out of the canal. They actually have said on February 1st when they meet, they will listen to us. We've had our engineers draw up a Barracuda system. At that point, we'd come back and say, please give us all of that easement back. But we're asking today, please don't take these lots and devalue them with a 20-foot line for such a small line, if that makes sense. We measured my husband's backhoe. It's about 6.5 feet wide. If you did have to get down that line, in that 10 feet, you would still be able to get into this 18-inch line. So, any other questions to that?
Just to kind of give you guys history of why it is 20 right now. When Serenity came, there was an agreement that was done, and it was recorded to the lot, which means the lot that they purchased, it was recorded on that property. And so I would hope that the title company would have showed you and kind of
Yeah, and
explained.
it's 55 feet at the top of my lot was the recording, which basically the top of ours, we were fine to just let it keep draining. We're like, we don't need to take this drizzle of water. We've gone over every rainstorm, looked at their little perforated pipe and what's coming out. Nothing's coming there. Obviously, the city said, no, we want you to go clear down. And we've done our own storm drain as well for the extent. And the perfect storm also is in this scenario, pipe is very hard to get. It's about 5 months out. So we switched from 15 to 18 upon our final approval and had to go back to Amcor and beg, please let us get this pipe. So we're back on the list. But it literally tripled in price, and you can verify that. So it went from what we thought was maybe at the worst case 400 feet to the top road to 2,000 feet, triple the cost. So it's a huge, and then to come back, these happen to be really good friends of ours, everybody in our subdivision, and say, oh, I'm sorry that you've just spent X amount of dollars in your plans. Now, I didn't notice that they've bumped that up to 20, and now your plan doesn't fit. So we did do all third car garages. It's a very nice, bigger lot subdivision. They're sitting on a ½ acre, but they literally do not fit if we bump that up to 20 feet. So any other questions while I'm here?
Do you guys have any questions? If not, then I'll kind of finish the whole history of it so you guys can understand.
He's my husband. He gets everything. I forget.
Just so you know, like visually, the center of the RCP pipe that's going to be going in is literally 4 feet off of the fence line, off the property line. So if you look at that easement, the pipe, just as far as where it sits in that easement, is just 4 feet off the property line. And that's partially because it skirts that road. So the road, the curb for the road where it goes up to the cul-de-sac, the pipe's right here, just right in between the curb and the property line, which I don't know if you can show them that, but it's very close to that fence line. So I don't know, in my opinion, I feel like 20 feet is more than, I mean, the pipe's clear over there close to the property line. I feel like 10 feet's plenty of room to be able to do any type of maintenance on that RCP pipe. Thank you.
Can I ask Tyson? So this is your area if it needed to have anything done, correct?
Yes.
So is 10 feet adequate?
So in some regards, there's ways to do it with not even necessarily entering the easement. That's absolutely true. There's a lot of inline repair types that you're getting from one access point to the other and not even necessarily entering them. Mm-hmm. I haven't personally worked in a 10-foot easement at any point where, I have all the answers for it, but usually your minimums are set for a reason, and that's to avoid liability, damaging homes, stuff that isn't covered with the easement, that you can go in there and work whatever the situation calls for, whether you're digging it up specifically inside that easement or not. I mean, we have some equipment that's 6 foot that might be applicable, 6.5 feet. We have some that I think our backhoe outriggers, because there's no reason to have a backhoe out in there if you don't put down the outriggers. And ours go out to 12.5. So just depending on what piece of equipment you're using. Hydrovac trucks are pretty large. I couldn't find my note for that one, and they didn't give me the answer, but 10-foot would be pretty tight for a large hydrovac, which is generally who we call for your inline stuff for cleaning. So that's my take on it. And I know Dana had some other insights to that she wanted to share.
That's the other thing I would like to add to that too, sorry, is the connection is at the very back where the Wilds property is, that where it connects into that 42-inch pipe on Barker, going to Barker Pond. So as far as this lot, you would not have to, I mean, unless concrete pipe, which is, like I said, the road over is 4-inch PVC, we're putting 15-inch to 18-inch concrete pipe, and it makes a connection with a man box back at the back corner of the lot, which will all be accessible from the Wilds Road right there. So the probability you would ever need 20 feet and to go to that line is, I think, pretty minimal. But
Yeah.
Sure. No, and it might be 30 years. I might not ever see it. There's some, like I said, there's plenty in town that's been there forever, and we've always been able to use our access on either side. But again, these things are for, you're not going to get a wider easement later if you get into that situation. And that's absolutely the tough part of that, is you're trying to plan for something that you don't know what it is. And if you have to come and dig that up because something does make it down past and jam or of that nature, then that's what you're trying to plan for, is something that we all hope never happens.
which that would naturally occur, just to give another 2 cents. Dana did ask, Dana said, could you go to the Teenus's property? And I don't know if you know the Teenus's, but they've been super kind to me, but they're not thrilled about developing the agricultural lot next to them. And I says, what can I do to tell them, hey, we want this? But in thinking about that, if Teenus's sell and develop, you will have a natural 10-foot easement before nobody could put that. So you will recapture and have 20-foot naturally. But also the developer, you could go in and say, here's a 10-foot easement on that property at that time when it has to be developed, if then it would take on any more water. But to let you know, this isn't connecting our subdivision. I know I've expressed that, but it is Serenity's 9 lots, retention pond, water. Very little flow, very little chance that you'd need that. But just to let you know, if that property is, you would naturally recapture an easement and then require that developer to, have that easement to recapture 20 feet.
Just a question for Tyson, but they had us put a massive box on this side of lot 1. So like Tyson was saying, there's a massive access point on both ends of the pipe, and we're talking about a 200-foot pipe, or what is it? 200 feet, yeah.
Right at the corner, it's about a 3-foot by 4-foot box that sits right in the sidewalk.
And so they made us, the reason they upsized it to an 18-inch pipe was because of the slope. So it's 15-inch up above because it's got more grade. It gets down to the bottom, it has a little less grade, although there's still good slope. But then it moves up to an 18-inch pipe. So I don't know. I feel like it would be safe to say that section would be easily, accessed to clean. And most of the time, the way those pipes are cleaned out is just how Tyson said, is they access both ends. Rarely do they get in, and rarely is there an obstruction in an RCP pipe that can't be handled through both ends of the pipe. So anyway, just for.
So I've got a question. Where you are placing the home, you've got a setback in the front that's, required that we have a certain setback. Are you meeting that, or do you have space in the
front and the back? And you're still meeting the side setbacks naturally, which are 10 feet for part of you. So
but
you're
what
still
I'm
meeting that, but
wondering,
the size of the home has to sit right next to that because we have 3rd-car garage requirements in our subdivision. So that only gives you 80-foot frontage. If you look at 2 stories and, ramblers, that's basically the size of a nice size. We're only like 1,800 square feet. It's not that we're asking mansions. It just really would be tough to find a home with a 3rd-car garage that would fit within 70 feet.
So, if it was a 10-foot east, the home is basically the
Yes,
edge of the 10 foot.
yes.
So
We-
I don't know if there's any concern with, and I know me and Dana talked about this, with sticking that up next to that foundation.
Well, and that's what Jenny Knight just happens to be, who Jill is to Harrisville City. So she knows exactly what these easements are. This is exactly her genre, and it is her home, and she understands. And they looked at flipping their driveways the way that their home does, even the driveway option. She's like, I know we have 10-foot easements all over Harrisville. You know, that's for one storm drain line. I know it might be tight, but what I'm saying, with an access point here and an access point here, I still feel like it's doable. We don't have to bring the biggest excavator out to get up an 18-inch line close to the fence.
Okay, let us ask a few questions here if we can, instead of, let's ask a few questions of Tyson's, rather than having a discussion point going on here. So Tyson, let me make sure that I'm understanding here. So they're required from their engineer to put in this pipe. Once it's turned over, then it's turned over to the city, is that correct?
Right.
And the easement, the pipe's all turned over to us.
Yes.
So is the engineer, their engineers decided what the size of the pipe is, and our engineers reviewed it and decided that's the size of the pipe? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so she would review and make corrections as necessary
Okay.
to our standard.
And even though, so their engineer has approved the size of this pipe, our engineers said that's the size of the pipe that's needed, whether it's 9 homes, 18 homes, 50 homes, that's already been decided. And so the easement, the size of the easement, whether it's 10 feet, 20 feet, needs to be accessible. And I'm thinking, well, you're trying to drive, if we have a 10-year storm, a 20-year storm, a 100-year storm, if you have to get a piece of equipment down beside, we all hope we never have those type of storms, but if you've got to get that beside a side of a building to dig that up, and hopefully you can snake it down either way. I'm just making sure that that's now your responsibility, whoever's responsibility is, to be able to maintain that. Is that the way I'm understanding this?
Yes, any issue with that pipe would be on the city's responsibility to deal with at that point. And that's all I was talking about with the foundation. I'm not a building expert or with foundations, but I know they're not supposed to be undermined, and you would be responsible regardless to ensure that's not happening one way or another.
So is this running down the back of the homes, or is this down the
I'll show you.
the sides of all the homes?
So from what was noticed and what I've been informed, and I just verified with Dana, it was just for lot 1. So, and that's exactly what the engineer sent us. So if it's more,
Dana was the one who told me, and I come in lot 1, and if lot 7 comes up with a house on 2, they're in high shape, so that might be fine. Dana was the one that said that she wanted it all congruent, that they keep it all line enough, they don't engineer to support that.
So do we need to? Well, we can't.
No,
we can't even look
this
at
is
it at this
just
time.
lot 1.
So if we need to table it,
so it's the side, let me pull it up again.
No, let's go with lot 1, if that's what you got on the agenda.
So Tyson, if we had that 20-year storm and you needed to get equipment in there to fix it without compromising a home, a foundation, do you presently have the equipment that you could go in and fix a problem with a 10-foot easement?
I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that either way, just because depending on what it is would determine that equipment. So
So it would, depending on what the problem was, you maybe could and maybe couldn't.
yeah, back to the foundation, I think that would be, I know Dana talked about it earlier, and I don't know if some of that's probably getting more into her thoughts too.
Yeah. So Jill, on number 1
so
here.
can Dana? Can we hear Dana now?
Because on number 1, it's got approved by engineer and public works director, and we've got a
big red X. So is that a disapproval?
It hasn't been approved.
They don't approve of the shrinking. And the reason why, and this is why I was saying there was an agreement, and because of this agreement and being recorded on that lot, we have to have that 20-foot easement. And this is let me show you what the agreement is. It's been recorded, so again, it's a legal document, and it says within that document, it will be a 20-foot easement. So right here, future stormwater improvements and easements. Future improvements, it's a 20-foot wide easement. So, but, hold on.
Okay, hold on. Can let us finish for just a minute, okay? Okay, just hold on just a minute.
So that's the reason why it was recorded with 20. So now the agreement is fulfilled because it's put as 20, regardless of what the preliminary is, because we had to fulfill this agreement, which you purchased the property with that agreement. So it is fulfilled.
Right.
It's recorded.
Okay, just a minute.
So regardless of what the preliminary was approved as a smaller, it is now a 20-foot, so therefore it is approved and the agreement is fulfilled. So it has nothing to do with what was previously approved on the preliminary, because this had to have been fulfilled regardless. So going forward, keep in mind, going forward, we're not going backward. They want to shrink that easement to 10. Which they have every right to request. Dana and Tyson were brought in because this is their specialty. They have to be able to go in and fix something or do whatever, because once it's deemed and turned over to the city, that's Tyson's department. That's the reason why they looked at everything and they don't agree with it, but it's brought forward to you guys, and that's why we brought them so they can explain why they're not. So that's the whole thing. Dana, did you want to talk?
Yeah, I did have a couple of comments regarding
Can we hear
the
Dana?
alignment of.
Dana, are you available?
Can you hear me? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Can you guys hear me?
Can you hear us, Dana? She was there. She started talking. Did you have any questions for Tyson while we're waiting?
I have a quick question for this couple that owns the lot. Is your house size as big as it possibly can be? I mean, that's what it sounded like, that you are at the edge of the 10 feet right now.
Maximized with the setbacks.
Okay.
As we reviewed house plans to fit and meet the setback requirements, it was very difficult to find one to meet our needs, the 3-car garages and the things that we're building, and still maintain the setback requirements, which are 10 feet on one side, 15 feet on the other side. So our home has 10 feet, we would be butt up right against the east setback, and we'd have 17 feet on the west side. So even if we flip-flop our house plan to accommodate a larger easement on the east side, we still would be within that 20-foot easement. So I guess
do you know how much in the easement? Because I had a feeling you were going to ask.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was your question?
Well, your comment was if we flip-flopped it, we would still be within the easement. But how much in the easement? Like 3 feet?
We have 17 feet on that side, so we would be 3 feet in the easement if we flip-flop our house.
So then we would be
based, we could do that, but it would, our house, because we're actually building a house similar to an attached accessory apartment for my mother-in-law who's 82 moving with us. So that added another element with building or designing a home to meet her needs, meet our needs, and fit on the lot. And so if we flip-flop the house, that's an option, but our house is almost 100 feet long. So you'd actually have more chance of hitting our footings. We're not building a basement. We're just building a crawl space with footings. So we're not going very far into the ground. There's restrictions for basements, I understand anyway, on this subdivision for the water table. But I wouldn't recommend us flip-flopping our house, because then you've got 100 feet of house that you're going to be up against trying to get narrow equipment into, versus the other length, which is about half that, because that's where our house is, if that makes any sense without drawing it out. The apartment sits on the home on the side with the driveway, with the 17 feet. So I personally wouldn't want to flip-flop the house, because it puts more of my house at risk. But I'd also like to address the stormwater, if you don't mind, while I'm here. You have 2 stormwater cleanouts, one at the top of our lot on the north side, another one on the very back. So the 200 feet, you have 2 stormwater easements there. If the stormwater line is put all the way against the fence, even if it is the 18-inch that the city engineer is requiring, there doesn't appear to be a great reason for going against your own ordinance that says must be up to the 10 feet. I was not aware of an agreement on the Serenity at the time that we went under contract. We went under contract to buy our lot in May. So we weren't under any impression that the setback was going to be 20 feet at that time when we went under contract. And then we've been under contract with them designing, and spent the last 9 months with an architect and engineering designing our home. So if there's a compelling reason that the city had to maintain that 20 feet because you had additional stormwater you were anticipating connecting to that subdivision or something like that, I can see I would be concerned as a property owner. But to have a stormwater in a 10-foot easement against the east fence with access cleanout points on the north and south side of my property, as a property owner, that I'm comfortable with that. But I didn't know about the 20-foot requirement from the Serenity. I think that it did create a hardship on this developer by the city allowing drainage from one property to another. And now that hardship is then being passed on to a property owner, where we were trying our best to meet your standards to fit within those setback requirements.
I have one more question that I'm just trying to clarify. Were you saying that on the other side of the fence, there's land there?
Here, I'll give you a shot so you can see.
So if the land to the east were to develop, if you were to allow that to go to the same zoning, the RE15 zone that the Rockwell Estates is, you would have another additional, at minimum, 10-foot setback before a home could be built on that east side.
So then
you would
have
naturally
your
have 20 feet between the home. And of course, if there will be a fence, because you're requiring a fence.
Yeah.
I understood there was going to be a fence requirement on that east side. Okay, so then there's not even a fence to worry about being in the easement. There wouldn't even be a fence potentially that you would be have a problem with.
But that, I would think you're talking about doing the same thing that have an issue with on this one, so they knowingly bought that agreement to remove that stormwater. So I don't think you're putting a burden on them, because it was part of that purchase in the first place. It wasn't like it was hidden in the background or unknown.
She would have gotten it when she was under
As the
contract.
contracted property owner, as Yvonne mentioned, I'm the city recorder for Harrisville City, so I work all the time in planning and zoning and things like this. But full disclosure, when we looked at the property to purchase it, it had a 10-foot easement at the top and a 35-foot easement at the back of the property. When we walked the property, you could see the leftover irrigation ditches that were used there. And our first impression was, okay, that easement is there because it's been used as flood irrigation. There's irrigation lines and things like that. Totally unaware that it was going to be a stormwater easement on that east side. So then when we just moved forward, went under contract, and then obviously when it was recorded and we were getting ready to sign documentation, I looked up the plat to see what the easement was and noticed that it was 20 feet, which at the time of our house design would have maybe played into our ability to design around that. But honestly, we played with a lot of house plans, and it's very difficult to get anything that's narrow that would meet a 70-foot setback, especially with a 3-car garage and then add a mother-in-law apartment and all that.
I'm not necessarily saying go for it. I'm not saying don't, but Dana's on now if you want
Okay,
to talk
so
to her.
let's hear from Dana if we finally have Dana on the line. Dana, do you have any updates or any thoughts since you were part of the approval process on this?
Can you guys hear me now?
She unmuted. She was there.
Can you hear me?
Again, so back to what I was getting at is, so if you're to go into it planning on having a 10-foot, and then you're basically saying, let's just anticipate the burden being on the neighboring property that hasn't done anything yet. You're basically doing the same thing that.
Just moving it to them.
Yeah, you're putting a burden on a property. Yeah, but you're still just.
I'm
you
just
don't
gonna
know
call
if,
her.
road's gonna shoot down. That's what I'm saying is most likely not. I 100% agree. But you're planning on somebody else's property doing something that.
I think in the plans it's the park. They wouldn't let us move our road the way we wanted to because the master plan shows the park there and then that road goes straight out.
It's okay. It's okay. We
I've
improvise.
seen 10 different plans,
Oh, hold
so
on.
until you come and do it, as you all know, you don't truly
I got Dana on.
Okay, so we have Dana on the phone, so we're gonna attempt
being
to get a
creative.
little feedback. We're gonna attempt to get some comment from Dana on a phone call, so we're gonna see if this technology works.
Fingers crossed.
Dana, do you have some comment for us?
Yes, so I first, I apologize. Work. Very frustrating.
There we go.
Okay, speaking to the storm drain line, I just had a couple of comments regarding the entire process. Number one, the agreement for Serenity is not something that's typical, but it was something that was done at the time, so we had to abide by it. And which required a 20-foot easement and the conveyance of the storm drain water down to the city storm drain system. Specifically on lot 1, there is a dogleg or a slight bend in the property line. So if you have a 10-foot easement, the entire pipe and the bedding will not fit in 10 feet because the center of the storm drain line is 8 feet from the widest part. If you can see kind of where that dot is on the screen there.
Can you see? Talking about this one right here.
Yes. So the storm drain line is a point to point, and as it's designed and for bedding an 18-inch line with the pipe thickness and the trench, it will not fit in that 10-foot easement. And just general practice, you don't want to have a storm drain line 5 feet from a building foundation. To me, that's just not responsible. And that's just my personal opinion, but I think it could create liability for the city if there's ever a leak in the storm drain and it undermines the home. So those are just some of the issues I would have with going down to a 10-foot. Tyson has spoken to the maintenance, which is, an issue. And it's been our standard procedure in the last, I don't know how many subdivisions since I've started to require 20-foot utility easements, whether it is 20 foot on a single lot or a combination between two lots.
Any other questions while we do have Dana on the phone?
Hello?
We don't have, hold on. Do you guys have any questions for Dana? No? Okay.
Okay, I think we have the petitioner does have a statement that she wanted to follow up with. as a comment to the follow.
One thing, and Dana can verify this, if Dana, you wouldn't mind paying attention, we just had a conversation because Amy maybe had said to me, since we already recorded and we're going to amend, look at everything and make sure. So I asked Dana, when does that 55-foot easement go away that Mark Green was allowed to put on our lot? And she said, the minute we tie into that line, that easement is released. So even though that easement says 20 feet, which that is the first time I've heard it, all our plans drawn up, all our pre-approval, everything said 10 feet until a week before we went before the city council. And like I said, it was the perfect storm because Jill wasn't there. My people weren't responding or didn't see her one comment left. So it was 10 feet all along. So this was never an issue because it wasn't known that it was going to bump back out to 20 feet. The other part of that I just wanted to say is we feel like we got a raw end of the stick being in that perfect storm area. The fact that many people have said on the city council that I've talked to, even within Amy and different things, it should have never been allowed to just dump that Mark Green should have had to take care of his own water. It shouldn't have become our problem. And I think the way that our design, we're being a very narrow lot, we have tried to play super nice, take care of this. Obviously, I've tried to get the canal to take it. It is a huge expense for us, but because we didn't know at the time that the subdivision was insufficient next to us, we didn't know that it would be 2,000 feet where we were taking this. We are going to a huge expense to make a less problem for the city, going in the RCP, going in the higher. We've done flow charts, we've done everything worst case scenario. And because even though you said to Tyson, it doesn't matter, it's your line once we did it. At the beginning, they said, Tyson, do you want to upgrade this to a 24 or a 30-inch line? I believe was the two discussions at the city's expense for future water. And they looked at everything and Tyson said, no, I don't need this. This is plenty sufficient. So if it was a bigger line, I could understand that. But Travis, I think, has something to say because we are doing the lines right now as far as that goes.
So we're kind of, I'm doing the line. So to save the money, I'm going to be going in and digging the line. So I've been out there this whole week and pulling measurements, and really it's a bad situation because of this road right here, where that pipe sits. It's literally 4 feet from the fence. So if you go straight 4 feet from the fence, where's it going to put it on the property line right there? Right, I mean, what am I going to do? I don't want to put another big box in the middle of their property, right? I mean, to get an excavator to do anything on that being 4 feet away from the fence line, you're going to be on the fence line.
Well, and the other point I wanted to bring up, even though I've said, Tina says I couldn't go to them and give them any incentive to say, please give me a 10-foot easement so we could split this. If you needed to get into that line for some reason before that property was developed, I do know that the Tinases wouldn't be like, yeah, you've got to dig up their house right there. I know they would allow access from the back, Cheyenne Wild, the Wilds property. I don't think anybody's going to say you've got to dig out a house. And obviously you would, if where the house sits, which is about 50 feet is what she's saying, you would carefully, go through there. But you've got clean outs. I don't know how often you tear up RCP storm drain, but I would imagine it's pretty limited, especially with 9 homes going into it.
And then the other thing is the only way to undermine a building is to go deeper than the footing. So we're not going to be going deeper than the footing with the bottom trench of the RCP. So there's no liability issue. There's no reason why they should have to dig deeper than the bottom of the footing on their existing house. So I propose that, I mean, I understand the situation, but hopefully you can see our side and understand the situation as well. With the future use originally that road was completely different, but they made us change it because of what the city wanted to do in the future, connecting over to Shorty's Lane. And in that futures, there was a park there. So in my opinion, I feel like we're going back and forth over something that's super simple. And I'm realist. When it comes down to it, I'm an excavator. If I got to dig that pipe up, I'm going to be on Tina's property. I mean.
So with that, just for legal purposes, I'm going to be honest and working with the city, you guys should, for Harrisville, you would agree. I have no right to get on anybody's property unless there's an easement where I have access. That can be a legal nightmare if I go onto someone's property and start digging. So, that's just that. So if
Right.
it's split between the two, that's fine. We just need that easement on that side. That's it.
When you say that easement on our side.
On Tina's, well, I'm saying if it was 10 and 10,
And I understand you can't record an easement on their property.
we could if they signed it, but we can't go onto their property. Well, regardless,
But
to be able to
he
have
just made
access
he
to
made
that
the
little spot,
comment that
that's
he
all it
couldn't
is.
dig it up unless he was on their property. And
Regardless if it's a 20-foot easement or a 10.
May I speak?
So this is my.
yeah, please state your name and then, okay.
I just want to take a step back and kind of speak to our sensibilities here. We're talking a lot of technicalities around the easement. We're talking a lot about history, whether it's fair, whether for them to have absorbed that as a developer. Putting all of that aside, I just kind of want to speak on a personal level and kind of explain, frankly, a little bit more what's going on here. So, as has been mentioned, we started into this process. The TAMs were not deceitful in any way, shape, or form. We understood it to be a 10-foot easement when we started this process. And going back historically, yeah, there's a lot of things that may have been missed there. And ultimately, when it was recorded, that's when we saw the 20-foot. But during that time, just to kind of paint a picture, for the last basically 10 months, we have sold our home. We have spent thousands of dollars, designing a home, not trying to build a mansion, but trying to build a nice home to accommodate ourselves. And as has been mentioned, we are trying to build a home with an apartment, essentially, for my mother. And so, it's come to a head. And this is literally the difference. We're not saying we're not willing. We always understood there to be an easement. We always understood that there was going to be a pipe along the east boundary of our property. We always understood that. And if it ever had to be serviced, and if it was the main storm drain, which it is not, the main storm drain for this subdivision is buried deep in the road. This is to address the runoff from Serenity. That's all this is. And that is the difference between us building $1 million home in Pleasantview for what we have been trying to do for the last 10 months of our life, or not. It is literally, that's all it comes down to, is the difference in this easement, because it is a deal breaker for us, which is a shame. So the city doesn't stand to lose anything. I understand we're talking hypotheticals about 100-year storm or some of these scenarios. I get that, and I'm a realist as well. But we're not, that's not what we're asking. We're saying if there were a situation to service this line, there is a box, a huge box that is literally on our property line, on that lot, that is a clean out, and it is also an open pipe of the 200 feet in the other direction. So the likelihood of ever having to service that is so slim. But we recognize that as property owners, we would have to assume that liability. But we're saying it's almost absurd or crazy. And I just want you to understand there's a little bit more to this whole picture. And to kind of paint a personal picture, I'm not trying to appease to your emotions. I'm just trying to be realistic so you understand there's a little bit more at stake here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't even want to address my daytime job or anything like that. I just wanted to say that regardless of what the purpose for the 20-foot easement was when it was recorded with Serenity, if there is a solution that we can come to, even if we adapt the easement to beyond our home, widen it where the property line starts to angle at a different, and make it 20 feet in the rear of the yard. My husband was, appealing to your emotional side. I'm trying to stick to a factual basis. I understand we're asking you to go against what your engineer is recommending. And I wouldn't do that in Harrisville. I wouldn't, and I wouldn't recommend it as their city recorder. I credit your engineer for standing her ground, for protecting the city. That's her job, and credit to her to do that. And I don't want to take away from that. But now you know the facts on our side, the emotion behind it, what we've invested in this. We're technically homeless. And if there's some kind of a compromise that we can come to address the city's side, make it safe for you, still give access for the storm drain, and not violate what the protections the city needs. I'm not trying to throw your code out the window. I'm not trying to throw your job. I appreciate, and if anyone here, I know the volunteer hours that you put in that people don't see. I appreciate that. But we are invested in this. And to add to it, my parents live in Fox Meadows. They live a third of a mile from this lot I'm trying to build on. My mom's 86. This isn't just about building a house for us. This is a complete future for us. I've lived in Harrisville for 18 years as I've been the city recorder, and I'm leaving there to move here, hopefully. So that's a little emotion and the facts. I wouldn't recommend you go against your engineer, but can we come up with some factual basis, some reason behind meeting your accommodations, widening the easement if it needs to be in the back, but being realistic about what the need for the city is? I don't want to put you at liability either. I don't want to have my house flood. I don't want any of those things.
So would it be possible to go to the neighbors, the Tinases?
Well,
And
so
the Tinases.
let me go ahead. Let me interject here. Let me go ahead. Can we go ahead and stop here for a minute? Let us go ahead and have some discussion here. I think this is the point. I think this is the point where we as a commission can go ahead and step over and take our time to have some discussion. So I want to stop and say thank you for all the discussion tonight. I think we've had some pretty good discussion. And I do know this is an emotional time. And, you know, I have some family members that are building right now, and they're going through a lot of emotion, and they're trying to learn the process of, you know, learning the whole easements and all of, you know, the hard steps of, you know, do we, don't we, and all of it. So I understand that there's a lot of steps in it right now. But I also understand it from the city standpoint, and we're all learning, and we're all making sure that we're sticking up and watching for all the proper steps. And we have to listen to our staff, because we are not all the technical type of people. So we have to listen to our engineers, we have to listen to our staff and our technical people, and we have to make sure that we weigh those in our decisions, because we're not the people that have that background and that knowledge. And so we have to understand that when we're making our decisions here. So we're trying to watch everything that is before us. So we're kind of in a tough spot, because we want to make sure that people have the opportunity to move to our city, but we are also making sure that the city's not liable for things, you know, heaven forbid that something, and the what ifs, you know, because you're saying, well, I'll take that liability, but that's not your liability if something did happen, because it's actually back on our step. And they're saying, well, it wouldn't be flooded if that happened because it's not deep enough, but it could undermine, and we don't know that happened because that water's bubbling for how long, and then it did happen. I mean, there's all these what ifs. And that's, I think what we're here tonight is to make sure that we're looking ahead to make sure things happen the best for all of our citizens, just in case, right? And so we're looking for those. And so we're looking, how was this presented when that subdivision was set up? And I think I was sitting over here when that subdivision, you know, was created and all that water was talked about up there. And I can remember that they talked about how was that water going to be dumped into this field, and how was that going to be set up for down here. And there was a lot of discussion on all of that. And I do remember a lot of that discussions, and that was, well, we'll get to that when we get there. And there was a lot of that talk that was taking place. And so once it's recorded, unfortunately or fortunately, that is what's on the books, and that's what has to take place. So I think there are some options. I think that is, if you can get, maybe you talked about the neighbors behind you and the field behind you, you know, you talked about, are there some options? I think that is an option if they're willing to put an easement on there and split an easement. I mean, that I remember that being a discussion back then, because that was some of the talk back then was, you know, how do we split roads and all that type of discussions. But I think from, you know, some of our discussions, we have to listen to some of the from our staff and our engineers. So that's some of my thoughts, and I'm open for other discussions and thoughts.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to look for possible alternatives. I've built a home. I know how stressful it is, meeting all the requirements. So you really feel for that. On the other hand, it's like, do I want to roll the dice on behalf of the city that we won't have a problem? You know what I mean? It's like, this is the city we live in. We have ordinances, we have everything that goes into place. And yes, it seems very unlikely a problem would happen. How much of a gambler am I?
We're going to Tyson be over on 700 West with a 4 and 5 at 100-year storm, not my little house with a PPN. One of the sensible issues that I would say to 68 people on a 4 and 5. I think that might be the issue spot in a 100-year storm.
So I think I heard that there was a 3-foot infringement into the 20-foot easement if you flipped it.
It would probably have to go back essentially to the drawing board. Sorry, I realize we have people, to flip our home. We've had it designed and engineered to
Sure.
face certain, but that would actually, after Dana pointed out the lot line issue, that would make me even more nervous because my house is 100 feet long. And when the lot line starts to shift, the original easement that we saw when we went under contract, it was 10 feet and then widened to 35 feet in the back. So we designed our home to accommodate the narrow side being on that east side and then the long width of the length of the house being on the west side. So even if we flipped our home, we would still have 3 feet that would enter that 20-foot easement. And
So if you don't flip the home, does that 3 feet go away? I mean, do you need to go right up to the 10-foot?
we do, unfortunately, because I don't know how much give we have on the driveway side. What we are trying to accommodate is a shop and we
Okay.
we have needs to reach the back and keep that width on that side. Plus it makes it a better situation for the apartment and access and having that exterior door and traffic that comes and goes from there. It wouldn't be very wise for us to.
Okay, well, I was just thinking if it was a 3-foot matter, maybe look at a 15-foot easement as opposed to.
And that's why I don't know. I came here, I couldn't find anything online in your packet. I couldn't look and see what staff memos or anything that you guys were being provided. I came here blind. Just what I know, which is I went under contract. Again, no discredit to the temps. They've been fantastic, and I know that they've worked.
It was pre-approved when the temp was designed as well. That is contract time too.
Okay, I'm going to step in really quick. Let me tell you the process of subdivisions, just so everyone knows and is very clear, because there's a lot of confusion. Lots are not supposed to be sold. They can be under contract, that's great, before it's recorded. That's why it's called a final application. That's when the plat is final, all the minor details are finalized. So if the layout changes, not the little details, it has to come back to you guys. So the or the layout, meaning the roads, the number of lots, does that make sense?
Mhm.
So if the layout changes, it would come back to you guys, it'd go through the preliminary process again. But the little details between preliminary approval and final approval, things can change as we go through construction. We might find little teeny details that we have to fix. But when it comes to final, that's when it's okay. Everything's got to be concrete because it's going to be recorded. That's why she designed it to a 10, because that's what the preliminary was approved. And that's where they're getting the 10. Just so you guys can see clarification. That's why.
I think you have I think it's important, I'm sorry.
No,
but
no, no.
I think it's important to understand that prior to this, our didn't exist. In your preliminary discussions,
Correct.
lot one, well, lot
So-
one was technically,
It was a storm drain.
was, okay.
So, but either way,
So there have been a lot of negotiations.
but that's why the easement front went from 10. That's where the 10-foot easement's coming from, because it was part of that process, and then the final, that's when it went
But
to
also
20.
the initial plans that I saw with the storm detention was on the west side of the property. So I don't know, I recognize.
No, it's
haven't been
okay.
involved in the process, and I'm really not trying to put you, I
Oh, no.
understand, you're in a very difficult spot having to make this decision, but we're putting it out there. I mean, I'm putting it out there. If there is a solution that we can come up with, even if we have to table it, to come up with a solution
So,
with the
Well,
engineer.
Those are your
and
options.
that's
Can I
just-
ask a couple
just as a quick reminder to the group, we can keep asking questions, and we have the option tonight to table and to keep asking questions to staff and to allow them to keep looking for solutions. We have the denial, or we can approve it. So just keep that as a recommend, we can do any of the three options tonight. So
I have a couple questions, and this probably goes to Tyson. So on that 3000 North Road that's on the north side of their property, eventually the Tinuses will likely pass away. That road is going to connect over to 600 West, right?
Correct.
That's the intention, yes.
Right, yes. I mean, who knows whether that's going to be in a year or 30 years, who knows?
Yes.
But could that storm drain then be rerouted down that road at that point? Whoops, sorry.
In theory, it would go back to this same point, so usually, so that 603,000, right about that lane, there's a cutoff, and it's actually coming down the road where that point's getting to. So you'd essentially just be sending it around in a 100-foot sort of U, but yes, I guess you could.
So where does the water discharge on the south side of their lot now? Does it just go into a canal?
There's the storm drain on that side of their property, more in the wilds, the Thompsons.
is it down here?
And it's
Here.
heading west.
And it heads west.
It's a laser. It's the green button.
So it's sitting right back here, and it's heading west.
Towards the Humphreys property. A Barker Pond. Oh, got it. Okay.
The Barker family pond, yes.
I mean, the only reason I'm asking is I'm just wondering, at some point, if that road is there, could that easement along their house be abandoned if a storm drain was down the middle of that road or wherever you put the? I'm just brainstorming.
So to me,
Hold on just a minute.
a lot of that stuff, you're getting back to in maintenance.
What if, yeah.
Go to lots of stuff that the intention was probably down the road, we'll get to do this, or maybe we can do that.
Right, sure.
That's how it exists, and it's been that way for 50 years, or so. I don't personally like to look at it that way, and that's what we've been trying to move out of, is sort of that. I think we can kind of do this now and make do, and trying to make it, and that's what those minimum standards are for. Is I didn't come up with those. And that's what I was getting at earlier. I haven't personally had to work in them, and I think a lot of the stuff they were talking, like I said, 90% of the time you'll probably have a jet truck on each side of it. I'm not going to get into the liability stuff because I don't know about the undermining and footings and the houses and liability, because you don't know what all that'll be. And that's what, yes, those are trying to protect the city from, or unknown liabilities of the future, and however building works around it. I can't say that road's going to exist, because I've seen lots of those roads that were always going to be there and
Never happened.
there, and they developed right where they said when they do, that road will be there, and that road's not there. So we have lines in some of those places because that's what everybody believes, and it was the easy route at that moment in time. And now it's a difficulty for the city to deal with.
Yeah.
So personally, with this situation, what it is, I do believe there are other options, but I think that you should absolutely look into before you start removing city requirements or standards or go against engineering or staffing, because there are other options. They've spoken to them. Some of them aren't eliminated yet, and at a minimum, in my opinion, all of those would need to be eliminated before I would start looking at making variances and reducing standards. I think that's, without getting into any of the maintenance, I think that's the simple solution to this, or any problem of this type, is there are other solutions, I think, that could be looked into, that are options, and until they're eliminated, I wouldn't allow this to happen.
Okay. Dana wanted to pipe in a couple ideas. So ideas are not off the table, just so you guys know. This was brought and said, we need to hurry and put it on the agenda, so we did. So that's one part. Anyways, and Tyson, Dana agreed with Tyson 100% that we can look at other ideas, but we need to go through all those other ideas before they feel that we should do anything with our standards. One idea is, depending on what the canal company says in February,
That's what I was.
that if they are allowing that, it gets rid of the whole
That
thing.
changes everything. So
So
why
then
fix it until we hear
we would
from
just
them?
vacate the whole thing once we get that letter of approval.
Yesterday, and my company said it was a very good letter and great a lot of good points. He gave us some hope again, but that's one person's opinion, so it would be nice to put the water where you don't have to go.
So, I mean, that would be the ideal form. That way we would just get rid of the whole thing. That's one. Two, we could look at options to route the water onto the 3000 north. It may increase pipe size. They're not sure, and things like that, which it might cost more for you guys. I know that's already tight with you guys. So, I mean, there's options.
So one option tonight would possibly be, like I said, we could deny it, we could approve it, or maybe it's table it while we looked at the different options before we just mixed the whole thing.
Right.
And that allowed the petitioner a chance to maybe look at these options before we just deny the whole thing, and allow them to look at these type of things. Because I want to allow them, I don't want to shut the door on anybody.
Right.
I want them to have a chance to be in our community, and I want the subdivision to have the best opportunity. But I am totally in support of our staff and our engineers, and I want to make sure that, that we're doing everything that meets our code, and I think that's what our group wants to do. But I want to make sure that we have the opportunity to listen to both sides.
I 100% agree with that. I think we can get creative. I mean, and I agree with Tyson. We don't need to. If there's options, let's look at them. But at the same time, I think we can figure I think we can come up with something. At least I hope we can come up with something. One of my thoughts was, could we is underground detention? I don't know. Can you do a storm tech system or something like that? I don't know. I know they're expensive, but
If they do underground detention, we would still need an easement for where it's at. So, and one thought, depending on what the canal company says, whenever it is in February, if they deny it, we can meet with the property owners and start throwing off some ideas. I mean, that way we can kind of have more of a side meeting.
We appreciate that. What are some of the
Rerouting the water to the line through 3000, but that would be part of you.
And because we are in that perfect storm scenario, I said, this system needs to be fixed, and it's all too little. It went from 4 inch to 8 inch at the bottom, and they said, no, we don't want any more water. So I don't know.
So I'm gonna make a suggestion that we maybe move on from this tonight. So we have those three options tonight. So do I have any?
I would like to make a motion.
Okay, there we go.
I would like to make a motion that we table this plat amendment to change the size of the easement located on lot 1 of Rockwell Estates at 677 West, 3000 North, and that we table it.
Okay, we have a motion to table the discussion for a future meeting. Do we have a second?
Yes, I have one comment. Can we put in this motion that we want to see a list of all available options?
So what we can do is we can list the options that we can do and whether or not they worked versus what they want to choose. How does that work?
So Julie, we've got a second with options to your amendment. Are you okay with that?
Who made the second? Sorry.
For a second?
I'm okay with that because I had thought when they
Okay,
would come
second.
back anyway, they would come back with those options.
With some options.
That we would have those listed.
So Julie's,
So I am okay.
Julie's okay with the second and with the options that they bring back some recommendations with different options. All in favor of tabling for tonight for a future meeting with options for the future? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. I do appreciate everybody and all of the discussions tonight. I think it was a very good discussion, and we thank you for allowing us to table this. We hope that there is some options. The best might be, we hope that we hear something from the canal company. That might be the best, even though sometimes that's not, the best is to dump into that. We have some thoughts on that one, but that might be the easiest on this recommendation. So we'll listen, and we hope to see that in the future. So thank you very much for the discussion.
We look forward to seeing you again.
Okay, we'll go ahead and we'll move on forward to administrative number 8, item number 8, so we can keep this moving forward tonight. I appreciate everybody's attention. Do we need a break, or should we just keep on moving?
Let's keep on.
All right.
Get it done.
Thank you, I agree.
Get her done.
All right. Thank you. Tonight, number 8, we have the lot line adjustment between 1083 West Highland Meadow Center and 4258 North Highland Meadow. This one is for a lot line adjustment. Jill, can you give us an update on this one?
Okay. Sorry, the Highland Meadows?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't see the applicant.
They're putting the two in.
Yeah, he didn't show up yet.
Yeah.
No, I know. So the applicant is Randy Wilson and his son Scott. As you can tell, here's 1100, here's Deer Crest, here's Harris Hills. This is Highland Meadows, sorry. 4258 is Randy's, and then 1083 is Scott's property. So that's the current layout. I always forget to click. Okay. So they're just wanting to bump, come on, this corner right here, just enough. And just right, can you see the little bit of a difference? Just slightly. Just to widen it.
Make the smaller lot bigger.
Just the front part on the cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
It does maintain the frontage and everything. Staff, Dana, I don't know if Dana's still on, but we've all looked at it. Dana actually saw this before the applicant came in. The engineer kind of sent her the drawings and kind of brainstormed. So.
Now, why is it? Why would they do this? Is it just so for the house to fit? Okay.
And it's between dad and son. They were both fine with it. Yep. So that's the big piece. Yeah.
I just wish the applicants would show up, but that's my own personal opinion, but.
I did notify them.
I know.
Dana?
Did you know that the water's line?
I just do the zoning, that's why I ask everybody. The water line's right there down the middle.
No, just the water service intended for lot 3.
So it's there, they're just shifting the lot line just a tad, that's all they're doing. Oh, I was like, what? We've got too much on the brain.
Are there any
It's been way
questions for
busy.
staff on this recommendation for a lot line adjustment?
No, it's not out of me.
Straightforward. Do we have any recommendation or do we have an emotion?
I'd make a motion that we approve the lot line adjustment between 1083 West Highland Meadow Court and 4258 North Highland Meadow Court, item number 8 on the agenda.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second, oh, no, you go ahead.
Well, we have a second.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion on the item? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
That was a long one.
Okay, we have unanimous. Thank you very much. We will go ahead and go to commission communications. Do we have any commissioners' business tonight?
No.
We are cruising tonight. I just want to thank everybody for the attendance tonight and helping out with all the discussion.
thank
you, Tyson.
Thanks, Tyson.
For
Thanks.
sticking out with us and the great discussion. We appreciate you being here tonight with us. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, Tyson.
I would like to get an idea from some of the commission members about that last item that we reviewed. I've been in situations where people can go through extraordinary means to accommodate an event that might never happen as far as a problem development is concerned. As Julie said, one thing that's not so good about that is the roll of the dice. But what's the probability, and is that part of the consideration? That if it's so unlikely, that does it make sense to go to extraordinary means to accommodate it?
Well, if you guys think about it, just to kind of keep in mind, last Serenity was what, 2019? I think on the top of my head, that's what comes to mind. Last year was extremely dry year. We don't know if we're hoping to get more water. So if we get a good year, that's one thing that Dana and Tyson have to look at all the time. If we have a really good year, is the city willing to risk all those lines that might not be big enough because we didn't account for it? And one thing to keep in mind as well is if something does happen and we have to pay out a lot of money to fix, we'll say, one home, we have to make sure we have the money to cover it. If we have to cover 6 homes, we have to make sure we cover it. If not, we have to up our insurance, then who knows? And it's realistically you guys paying for it. Does that make sense? So that's why Dana and Tyson are very vigilant in making sure, not of the likeliness of it never happening, the likeliness of there's a good chance it could happen if we get the water we're supposed to. Pleasantview is also built on springs.
Yeah. So you can't really look at this in isolation. It's a compounding that could happen.
And I jokingly, we've got all those homes down at the bottom of my street. I have a little dead end street and there's all those homes going in down there and behind it all the fields. The neighbors that put in a bunch of homes 2 fields behind us, and a year ago they had a bunch of storms that came and it flooded all those homes down at the bottom. There was about 30 homes. All the basements got flooded.
Right, that's
And
why we
told
do
them
the
all
geotech studies.
That's where the farmer used to put all of their cows, and that used to be the watering hole down there, and all the ones down at the bottom of us. And so when we talk about, hey, make sure that we do all the basement studies and everything else, because what have we been for the last 4, 5, 6 years?
In the
dry.
drought.
We've been dry.
And that's
dry,
the
dry.
hard
It's
part with the
coming. It's coming.
geotech studies. When you do the geotech studies,
And it's all the springs
that's,
and everything else.
you know, during a really dry year, you're not gonna find groundwater like you would
And
if we were in a
Maybe some
normal.
year again, we're gonna get water,
wet
and then they're
year.
gonna all come back to us and say, why'd you let them build down there?
A question I had, oh,
Sure. Can you come bark in here? I love it. I love to give you a bad time. I love it that you're here. Thank you for being here.
You want me to say anything? Oh, I really appreciate this good discussion. That was a hard emotional situation, and I applaud you though for taking the emotion out of it, because sometimes we want to forget why we're here, and not that you want to, but it's hard, and we think that will never, or what's the likelihood. But to what Jill said and to what Tyson and Dana said, our job as commissioners, her job as commissioners, job as council members, is to think on behalf of what could
the
happen.
city.
Because in the situation, what was it, 2019 or 2018, Serenity was granted something that maybe perhaps wasn't in the, well, I won't speak to that, but you know what I'm alluding to. That's now caused a problem for this. And then if you let them, might cause a problem for that. It might cause a problem for that. And at what point do you stop? Or what point do you decide to say, let's fix something?
It's
But
like the
once it's
whole
granted,
sidewalk thing.
That's
Well,
what
not
it
that
is.
you have to, but this created a whole nother situation for another subdivision that people thought. And the genius is it's going to be developed.
It's just
not
when.
if,
It's
but it's
when.
when. And it may be to a new owner who says, oh, forget it, you're not touching my property, no way. And the city has no right to.
No.
And to bind another property owner because of a decision now, how fair is it to them now?
Yeah, they don't
Because
want
we
it.
just did that with somebody else in 2019. So just some thoughts.
And you'll get a lot of these more with subdivisions as the standards update and we find, okay, this wasn't a good standard, we're gonna change it to this. And it might cost a little bit more and you'll hear developers gripe because they have to pay more, but we're getting what we're supposed to be getting because that's why we write the standards, because we've learned from the old standards to make it better.
Good on you guys for, oh wow, it came back for a minute. Good on you for, looking at all the options and really thinking this out. I think that's awesome to watch this process, and if I were them, I'd be really grateful that you're looking at what you can do.
So you're talking about standards that are known to work versus standards that might work.
Okay, for instance, a little short. We had for instance, a few years ago, somebody wanted to do a half road. We won't mention who or what. They wanted to do a half road because it would, it wasn't fair. We require 60 foot, all these things. And they figured out a way to make it work against the edge of their property. But that would then bind the other property owner who hadn't even developed. But besides that, we don't build half roads for a reason. Our number one cost for maintenance in the city is roads. And if you build a subpar road, that's just going to cost you guys more money. It didn't go through, hallelujah. But if you would have done that half road, there's a reason why we have a standard. And part of the discussion was, well, look down Pleasantview Drive, there's no curb and gutter. Well, yeah, because it was built in when, then we figured out, oh, we need to add curb and gutter because we have all these problems. There's lots of places in the city that don't fit our current standard because they were built before. And then we looked at that and realized that's probably not the best thing. We have this problem, this problem, this problem. Let's improve our standards so we don't have that problem anymore. So yeah, there's lots of instances where you could look back and say, well, we didn't do it. We didn't have that standard before. Why do we have it now? To improve our quality of life, to make it cheaper to maintain, to save money over the long run. Initially, it's more expensive for the developer. Yes, 100%. But in the long run, that becomes the city's responsibility and problem. So
One question I had, and I didn't know how to ask it or if it would have been appropriate, but it seems like when you've got an architect working, when we were working with an architect, he had our land, everything was plotted out, elevations, how much room he had to put into the home. He went to the legal description of it. Shouldn't this have been caught somewhere? And at what point do
If you heard where I said the process is,
Yeah.
they shouldn't
They jumped the
have,
gun.
they jumped the gun because
So, yeah.
it's fine to have things under contract, but when you're designing a home
Yeah.
to a lot that's not even recorded yet, you are still putting yourself at risk that there could be changes of
Yes.
some kind.
And I think we have to be aware of that if people make a mistake, sometimes.
Not our responsibility.
It's not, and so then people want you to come in and fix their oversight, which if we can, and if it's in the best interest of the city and it all works together, I think we're here to help citizens. But if it's not in the best interest of the city and it was their responsibility and now it's created a problem, ethically and morally, we have to look at.
We're here for all the citizens, not just for one.
I made that mistake myself, with my project that I've got going up there. I looked at everything that was easy to see and thought, oh yeah, so I got the architect going and I got everything going, and then all of a sudden, there's an ordinance as far as how much I can cover the lot, and that's all on me. It was there. I could have seen it, but thankfully we found a way to make all that work in my case, but I made a mistake. I should have figured that out first.
And I will be honest, I had no clue I needed to do certain things on my property until I started here.
And
like seriously.
I have had a thought, and I'll throw this out really quick. What if there was a checklist to give to people of just saying, it's your responsibility to check this, look at the general plan, look at this, look at that, so that you're not then in complaining that, oh, I didn't realize we were having Skyline Drive in our backyard. Well, that's not our responsibility to explain that, but maybe would it be helpful?
We actually do sit down and talk through. I mean, Jeff was, it was with Fred though. Well, you've been part of it, kind of.
I think.
With development, we go through, we have the comments, we address everything, we make sure. But the thing is, we would leave it to the developers when they sell, hey, because we are bound by certain things to make sure it's on the Mylar. So we are protected, so we don't have problems, things like that.
So it's the developer who has the responsibility.
It's really the title company, if it's recorded onto the lot.
I mean, my thought is that if you gave a list to a prospective developer / builder or homeowner, and something was left off of that, then maybe you're putting the city at risk. Yeah,
well,
I mean,
you're never going to make everybody happy.
You're not, and so I think, and really, I think here's the minimum requirements the city requires or whatever, and you have to do your due diligence and you to make sure, like there's always, believe it or not, across that property that my brother bought, there's all sorts of easements that we had no idea, which they're being abandoned, but there's. Just in, you look at the field and go, oh, that's a beautiful field. And, look at how many homes you could put there. But then you go, oh, there's easements everywhere on this property. And anyway, it's interesting. But if the city was responsible for telling me that, and then we did something, then we'll find out there's still another easement, I think you probably ultimately end up putting the city at some kind of liability.
That makes sense.
Jill, staff communications?
We aren't having our meeting in 2 weeks.
We're not?
No.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Well,
the goal is to keep it at that first one.
Well, this one made up for it.
And normally, if I didn't think it would be a
known
quick
for
one,
short ones.
Well, if I knew it would, we had more than, I knew one would be a big discussion. That's why I was we're fine.
Better get it
but
done.
But if I have a lot of controversial ones, I'll bump some to that second one because you guys don't need to be here that late.
This was okay. Better knock it out one night and then we don't have to do it 2 nights. I'd rather do one night.
Okay? I
Are we
appreciate
doing
your
that
patience.
planning conference in what is it, March or something this year? I think I got an email about that a month or two ago.
I'll look into that and I'll email you.
Okay.
I'm still trying to get myself. Here, you know what? I'll hurry and look it up right now.
I think it's the APA or something like that. I've never been to one since I've been here, but
That's in October. That's usually. I want to say that one's usually in October. APA sponsors. No. There's a spring conference in March. Canab. Yes, you guys,
She'll
it
look
is.
it up and send us some information.
I will send you some information.
Make a motion that we adjourn for tonight.
Yes. Thank you.
Favor